Hello, welcome back with the Racing Hinter. Okay, as you know that this is our third day, and this will be our third lecture from the last lesson. And this is the lesson which has been written by Alphonse Daudet during 1871. And this was the time when there was a war between the Prussia and France. As Prussian soldiers were well equipped under the leadership of Bismarck, who was a great commander of his time, and he crushed the French army very drastically and won the district of Alsace and Lorraine. So in this lesson, Alphonse Daudet want to convey the message that during war, what kind of life and what kind of effect it had on the life of student at school and the public in general. And this is the story. Okay, this is the story about a teacher who taught French language, which is being narrated by his student Little Franz. But the friend said that I was a very negligent, very careless student. I always tried to seek some new things to avoid the learning and always want to play and to have fun. Going late for the school was my usual routine. One day when I was going to the school, I saw there many things in the way which distract my mind. And afterward, when I was running and crossed the town hall, I saw there was many person and there were a crowd in front of the town hall. I haven't the idea of any kind that time. Why there is still a silence in the school? Again, why Mr. Hamel is so sad? Why did he very kindly said to me? Why he has put on his Sunday clothes, his beautiful clothes? Why the villages were there? And why all these things falls there in the school? These were some questions rising in his mind and running in his mind. Why this happened? And what is the matter? Silence, beautiful cloth, villages, all sadness. Suddenly, Mr. Hamel said that the order has come from the Berlin that they want to introduce their own language in the school of Alsace and Lorraine. New master will come tomorrow, and this will be your last French lesson. So you should be very much attentive. And yet, instantly, he was feeling very sorry, heavy with not taking the interest in his own language. Why? I didn't know a single word that how to write. He was feeling sorry for the books that he carried, which seemed very nuisance for him a while ago, and to carry, and too heavy to carry. Not only that, but also Mr. Hamel, whom he hates so much, he forget each and everything about Mr. Hamel, his books. It means that he has to stop everything here. He will not meet Mr. Hamel again in his life. Now he realized that why he has put on his Sunday clothes and why the villagers were there, because they were here to show their respect and they want to honor him for his 40 years faithful service to this country. Instantly his name called, and his turn was to reciting. But he mixed up the first part, he didn't know anything about. But Mr. Hamel didn't say anything. Okay, don't worry. No problem, I will not scold you. You must have felt bad enough just to know that this is your last lesson, and tomorrow and today afterward there will be German language in the school, and you have to learn that. You must have been feeling very bad already, so I will not scold you. And for this, you are not only responsible that you don't know anything about it, your parents also responsible, I am also responsible. Okay. So one thing to another, he was talking about their language, that your language, the French language, is the clearest and logical language of the body. It is our duty, it is our moral duty to preserve, protect, and guard it. because it helps in our direct situations. We should guard it. We should stick to our language. So after that we have a lesson on grammar. And whatever Mr. Hamel was telling us, it was very easy to understand. I was imagining how well I was understanding. It means whether I had not listened very carefully, or either Mr. Hamel had not told us with such patience. But all in all, he wanted to give each and everything to us with one single stroke, whatever he knew. Whatever Mr. Hamel knew, he wanted to give everything to us and want to thrust in our mind and want to keep in our mind with one single stroke. That was that. Now, after the grammar, we had a lesson in writing that day. Mr. Hamel had new copies for us written in a beautiful round hand phrases. They look like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desk. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. After the grammar, we have a work of writing. And for the writing purpose, Mr. Hamel has brought new book in over which they have written Alsace, France, and it was looking like a small and little the flag. Okay, that was hanging around the room over our desk in the rod. It seems that there is a rod, and over this rod there is a little the flags. You saw that was hanging there in the classroom. It seems. Okay, you ought to have seen. You can see that everyone was so busy in their work, and you ought to have seen how everyone was set to work, and how quiet it was. Everyone was very quiet, very silent. They were set in and were set to work. The only sound was the scratching of the pen over the paper. There was only one sound, that was the sketching of the paper. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to it. To them, not even the littlest one, who walked right on, tracing their fish hooks as if that was French too. On the roof, the pigeon cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in jabbering with the pigeon? Everyone was so busy that there was only sound of sketching the pens over the paper. Once little bit flew in, but even in the littlest one didn't pay attention to what that beetle. Everyone was so busy. So it seems that they were the writing of French, and they were doing the French work, and they were learning the French. On the roof, in the meantime, he heard the low sound of pigeons, and French was thinking that. Will they make them sing in German, even the pigeon? Will they sing them? Will they learn them sing in German? Actually, this was not possible. You cannot, and nobody can take away your love from, or the love that you do, or from your mother tongue cannot take away. Invader can impose their own language on you, but they cannot take your love of mother tongue. Right? So whenever I look up from my writing, I saw Mr. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first in one thing and then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Whenever I look up, whenever I get the time to look up, I saw that Mr. Hamel was motionless, and he was seeing and watching in the gazing one thing then to another, and as he wanted to fix everything that was there in front of him in the school. You can see, it was amazing. For 40 years he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window, in his class in front of him, just like that. For 40 years he had been there in the same place. There is a garden in front of the window, that was same, and only the desk and branches had been worn smooth. Walnut tree in the garden were taller, and the bough vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. Now it must have broken his heart to leave it all. Poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must have left the country next day. Whenever I look up, I saw that he was sitting motionless and watching one thing and then watch another, as if he want to fix everything in his mind before going from this place. There is a garden in front of the school, and there is that school and this class in front of it that was the same for the 40 years. And in front of that school, that in the garden, there is a hoop vine that has grown up, and which has gone up to the roof now with twisting. But there is many plants that he planted himself and has grown much. And one more sound that they hear from the above the room was the scrapping. You see, because her sister was packing his luggage as they had to leave the country next day for ever and ever. Okay, the translation of this paragraph here. Whenever I look up from my writing, I saw Mr. Hammer sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first one thing and then another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that the little classroom. As for 40 years he was here, and so before going from here, he wanted to fix each and everything in his mind. Looked in that little classroom. For 40 years he had been here in the same place. For the same place he was here, and with his garden outside the window, outside the window there was a garden, and the class in front of him was the same for 40 years, just like that. Only the desk and benches that had been worn smooth, it has become old, and the walnut tree in the garden were taller. The walnut trees that were just in front of the school in his garden has grown taller, and the hobbine that he had planted himself twisted up to the roof now. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man. Having been seen all these things, his heart has been breaking, all these things. And the sister moving about in the room above room, just above that classroom, her sister was packing his trunk, his luggage, as for they must have left the country next day. The very next day they have to go. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the baby chanted, "There, ba baby, boo, boo." Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles, but he had the courage. He had that much courage that he can hear every lesson to the very last. And after this writing, and after that writing, and we have a lesson in history, and the babies and the little children were chanting their baby, they were practicing, and down there at the back of the benches there was an old houser who was also uttering and chanting with them, and repeating with them, and who has put on his spectacles now, holding his primer in both hands. He has hold his primer, the book in his hand was spelled letter with them, and he also was spelled that letter baby with those babies. And you could see that he too was crying. He was trembled with emotion. You could see, we can see that at that time that Mr. Hauser also was weeping, and he also was crying, and his voice was trembling with emotion, and because of emotion and because of his love for the hammer, it was trembled, and it was so funny to hear him, and having been crying and seeing him crying, everyone want to laugh and cry, because his crying was so funny, so everyone wanted to laugh and cry. And how well I remember it, how interesting it was that I remembered it, that last lesson. I understood each and everything about that last lesson, and whatever Mr. Hamel was telling them was quite easy to understand. And all at once the church clock struck 12, then the Angelus struck 12. Okay, in the meantime, and at the same time, at the same moment, the trumpet of the Prussians and returning from Riddle. because Russian soldiers were returning from the drill. They raised their trumpets and they, yes, which was sounded under our windows, which was sounded under their windows, and they were coming from there. And Mr. Hammer stood up very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. And when George Clock struck 12, Mr. Hamel stood up from his chair and he looked so tall, and I never looked him so tall in my life. And my friend said he I something, but something choked him. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't continue the statement. He couldn't go on. Although he wanted to say something, but he couldn't because of emotions. Okay, because of the emotion that you have to leave this country forever, and you have to leave this place forever, and he has been here for 40 years. So now it is the time to leave this. So under this emotion, he couldn't make his statement continue. He couldn't talk continue. Then he turned to the blackboard and took a piece of chalk, and bearing on wall all his might, he wrote as large as he could. Then as large as he could. By taking the piece of chalk, he writes something. Vive la France! Long live France! France Zindabad! Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. And he stopped. He wrote Vive la France, and afterward he leaned his head against the wall, touched his head against the wall, and said nothing, but made gesture with his hand that school is dismissed, you may go. So what is the core idea of this chapter here? Here actually the Mr. Alphonse want to say that we should stick to our language. We should value and we should give the importance to the time. Alright, as long as we stick to our language, okay, it is a the tool that can break and that can help us a lot in any the crucial and dire situations. So Alphonse Daudet said that as long you hold fast to your own language, it can help you like a prison's key. So it is our duty to preserve our language. We should guard and we should protect it. We should not feel ashamed that we are talking in this language, that language, what people will say, wow, they will make fun of me. Ignore it. If you want to keep your culture alive, want your language alive, so you should protect it, you should use it, and you should guard it, you should feel proud of it. So, as long as you are close to your language, you definitely will help from it, and you definitely this language will help you in or at the time of need. So stay tuned, stay in touch with your language, and feel proud on your language. That's it. That was a core idea of this chapter, that language is very important. Stick to it. Feel proud on your language. That's it. Have a great day.